in my 20s, I was in a relationship, ended badly. I was, pretty torn up about it. Would it be ethical for me to have taken a drug that said, okay, I'm just going to like erase those feelings that I feel, for this woman?
Yeah, this is another just deeply challenging question, and it's one that we dwell on in the book. And people have different attitudes about this. So the conservative view about the value of suffering is that almost unbearable suffering is the sort of thing that they think we ought to be very slow to try to eliminate from our lives, because they think it's the sort of thing that can help us build our character or find meaning or value in existence. And that if all we had was happy experiences all the time, it would be something like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which is a dystopia. It's not actually a utopia to be taking soma pills and just be happy all the time, because the whole point of that book is that you don't have a sense of meaning and you're disconnected to what's true. And so a sort of dogmatic conservative view would say you should never take a drug to try to reduce the suffering that you feel as a result of a traumatic relationship. And moreover, they might say the pain and the grief that you feel is partly instructive to you, so that before you get right into another bad relationship, you'll have very strong reason to reflect on what happened and potentially learn from that and avoid getting into a similarly bad situation. So that's where one center of gravity is in this debate.
And you call that the bioconservative view, correct?
Yeah, that's I think that could be fairly described as a bioconservative view. And
that's sort of what's feels bad in the moment, in the long run, is going to be good for you, because it's the whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger sort of philosophy, right?
That's one way that some bioconservatives will talk about the value of grief or suffering. They'll make an instrumental claim that this grief or this suffering is the sort of thing that on balance is likely to help you grow as a person and so forth. Sometimes it sounds like it's almost an intrinsic claim. They'll say that suffering is part of what it is to be a human, and if we relieve suffering, we're relieving something that's intrinsically valuable, even though it feels bad. So there's different ways that argument is sometimes supported. On the what's sometimes called the bio-liberal side of things, who are just roughly speaking people who tend to be a little bit more permissive or open to the idea of using new technologies to intervene in human experiences, they might respond this way. They would say, well, sure, sometimes suffering can be instrumental, but as we all know from people who experience, for example, a chronic untreatable depression, and it disables them from participating in life or potentially starting a new relationship, which could itself have all sorts of value for them. There are some cases where suffering is just suffering. And we quote my colleague, Eric Perrins, who is describing this view, where he says, sometimes suffering just crushes human souls. And we have to be open to the idea that if we're willing to take other kinds of measures to address what feels like unproductive suffering, where we feel like, I've just been in despair for years and I'm not even open to a new relationship because I'm so downtrodden over what happened before. At some point, if we respect people's decisions about their own lives, we might think that a person could say, I've suffered enough. And there are non-technologically mediated ways of dealing with suffering. You try to get over your partner in all sorts of ways that people have written about forever. You can, try dating other people, or you delete all the messages from your old partner, or you go to therapy, or whatever it is. And we're always talking about drugs in this book as something that's not meant to replace those measures, but to potentially enhance them or serve as adjuncts to them. So imagine, for example, that you are going to talk therapy to work through your feelings about this bad relationship, and you're saying, I've suffered enough. Well, your therapist, or if it's a psychiatrist, they might prescribe you a drug that's meant to help or facilitate the effects of the therapy, so that instead of being completely disabled by the depression, you actually are able to get to a place where you're able to more productively deal with those emotions rather than simply be crippled by them. And so either side can be dogmatic. The progressives could say, well, any individual should just decide when they suffered enough, and here's a range of drugs they could take to relieve the suffering, and let's not analyze that too much more. Usually that's a kind of a straw character of the progressive view. Few progressives are that simplistic about it.
Yeah.
You can also be dogmatically conservative, where you say, never should we ever intervene in the biological substrates of any human experience, even if the person really thinks that the suffering is no longer serving a good purpose in their life. That would be dogmatic too. So we try to carve out a space in the middle where we can say we should certainly be aware of the potential use or maybe even the intrinsic value of certain kinds of suffering in certain contexts, but we shouldn't be dogmatic about it. And we should be open to the possibility that some drugs used in some ways under some contexts could be necessary for helping a person extricate themselves from unbearable and unproductive suffering, and thereby potentially increase their genuine flourishing in life.